All right, Chris, it's hard to think that going into a week 5 game against the Detroit Lions in the past, like, it's Detroit. Chalk up the W. Not so fast.
Not this year, and this is not even the same Detroit Lions team that they played just 9.5 months ago.
It's a Lions team that's going the direction that the Carolina Panthers want to be going. We'll get into that as well. Does Frank Reich actually want Bryce Young, or did he even want Bryce Young? We'll debate that a little bit more. Let's get this sucker started.
The state of North Carolina covers 53,000 square miles. It is the habitat of the feared Carolina Panthers. Get dialed in, Panthers fans, for an in-depth look at your team, exclusive interviews, locker room insight. Let's huddle up for Panthers Playbook. Here are your hosts, Dennis Cox and Chris Lea.
Welcome back to another episode of Panthers Playbook. That's Chris Lea, Dennis Cox here with you. Before we get into conversations about Brian Burns and does he even want to stay with the Carolina Panthers, the upcoming game against the Detroit Lions, does Frank Reich actually like Bryce Young? Maybe he never actually wanted the guy in the first place. Before we get into all that, make sure you hit the subscribe button, smash that subscribe button, leave us comments, leave us thoughts. Thanks everyone in our conversation, got into the conversation after the game against the Minnesota Vikings. Thank you all so much for hitting the likes and all that. It helps us out a ton. I wish all those things, the conversations, Chris, in the comments section would actually help the Carolina Panthers win some football games.
Yeah, they need to get something in really quick, and it's really looking like they're going to head into their bye week at 0-6. But I will say this. I'm thankful that their bye week is earlier in the year than, last year. Remember, it was 12 games. After 12 games into the season, it was week 13. So, that wouldn't be good for this team right now. Maybe they do need that 1 week break to regroup and come back a different team and with a different mindset.
There are a lot of different things that they got to figure out, especially when it comes to Frank Reich and the play calling when it comes to Bryce Young, because we've used this term. We used it this past weekend. And actually, it's funny seeing this term actually starting being used a lot by a lot of people. They need to take the training wheels off of Bryce Young. They have to take the training wheels off of Bryce Young. Throw him in the deep end. If he starts to drown, pull him up, shake him off, throw him back in there. Like, you got to get to this point because guess what? Richardson and Stroud, the guys that he's being compared to, they're letting these guys just play. And I don't think they're just letting Bryce actually just play. And it's a big-time problem right now.
And I will say this, and I know a lot of Panthers fans are looking at what Richardson and Stroud are doing, and they're like, we could have had one of those guys, but also you got to look at their situations are also very, very different. And different teams who have different advantages that the Carolina Panthers just do not have right now. And so there's so much that is going wrong with the Carolina Panthers. It's almost not a fair comparison. Like, people are talking about C.J. Stroud and his good game, and he was, 16 for 30 passing? That doesn't really look good on paper. But, Bryce Young was, 25 of 32? But Bryce Young doesn't have a number one wide receiver. He doesn't have time to throw. He doesn't have a running game, and still was able to do that. So, let's kind of keep things into perspective here. Bryce Young is still who he's been made out to be, but he's going to need help. He's not going to be Superman like we're used to seeing in Carolina.
And thing about Stroud as well is, the completion percentage was really low, but they're allowing him to push the ball down the field, which is something that we're not seeing on a consistent basis. We're seeing the Houston Texans, you know what? We're going to open it up. Let it fly, kid. Let it fly. And I think Nico Collins is doing pretty well. Tank Dell's doing a pretty decent job for himself down there in Houston. They actually have some pretty good young weapons out there. But nonetheless, you're always going to have that comparison, right? Just go back in history. The people that you're drafted with, you're always going to be compared to them. So I totally get it. But it's not just about this year. It's the long term. It's 5 years, 10 years from now. That's the long-term play when it comes to that. But the big question is Frank Reich and his play calling and his coaching, is he the right guy right now for Bryce Young? Right now, it ain't working. But there's a big question, Chris. You brought this up this past Sunday after the Vikings game. So if you didn't see that point, go to the 14:28 mark of that last video, because you brought up something very interesting, Chris, about Bryce Young and Frank Reich, and if Frank Reich actually really wanted Bryce Young.
Yeah, just to quickly give people context if they decide not to go back. But basically what I was saying was I had a chance to speak with Boomer Esiason before the NFL draft. He was under the impression that Bryce Young would not be the number 1 pick for the Carolina Panthers because Frank Reich, his boy, his former roommate in college, likes big quarterbacks. He said specifically between 6'2" and 6'5", 215 to 230 pounds. That's what Frank Reich likes. Now we know that Scott Fitterer, the GM, and David Tepper, the owner, loved Bryce Young early, and this is the guy that they had pretty much marked 2 years ago that they wanted to potentially go after. So there was that conversation of, Frank, this is the guy that we want. Now, some people were saying, they were responded to it on Twitter or on YouTube or whatever and said, Frank Reich is sabotaging Bryce Young. That's not what I'm saying, and that's not even what I think. Think about it like this in this term. If you are a manager at a particular job, and yes, it's maybe your decision to hire somebody, but your GM and the folks that are above you are like, hey, we really like this person. This is a person that we've been keeping our eye on from this particular school that we've been seeing, and they've come in for an internship and blah, 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 blah. But that person doesn't fit the profile of what you normally look for. But they're saying, your new bosses are saying, this is the guy that we want. That's typically your decision, but they're saying this. Okay, cool. I will go with you on this because I trust you and I've met the kid. It's a great kid. But you may not trust that person initially. Their person's gonna have to prove themselves to you because this person does not fit the profile of what you normally like to have, whatever that may be, right? If you want to hire somebody from an Ivy League school and they came from UNCG and you're like, this person from UNCG is gonna have to prove it to me. And I'm wondering if that's where Bryce Young is with Frank Reich right now. It's like, bruh, you're not quite Ivy League. I like you. You've got the pedigree. You've got the tools there. But I just know that it works with these type of people, and I just don't know if it works with you yet. I don't know if that's sabotage, but that is distrust, and I'm not sure Frank Reich actually trusts Bryce Young 100%, and we can see it in the play calling.
Well, let's go right into that conversation that you had back before the NFL draft with Boomer Esiason. Here's what Esiason had to say about what Frank Reich looks for in a quarterback.
The one thing I know about Frank, I know what size player he likes, and that is the size between 6'2" and 6'5", somewhere between 215 and 235. So 3 of those 4 players that you mentioned fit the measurables. But what I don't know is who they are as people, because I did not sit down and meet them. I did not go through their backgrounds. I did not talk to their college coaches. I'm like everybody else out here wondering, what special ingredient do each of these players have that Carolina would like to lock themselves onto and believe that he is going to be the leader of the franchise for the next 10 to 15 years. So when I look at this, I say, well, Bryce Young has all the intangibles. He's a great leader. He's a great young man, it seems like. I've seen all of his interviews. His measurables, however, tell me, warning signs. And all of us that have ever played in the NFL and have been around the NFL recognize that the success of quarterbacks less than 6 feet, it's a very small list. And as Bill Parcells says, if the guy is under 6 foot, he better be Jesus Christ to play in the NFL.
All right, Chris, pretty telling stuff when it comes to what Boomer Esiason told you before the draft. And you brought it up. Does Frank Reich actually trust Bryce? And right now, I'm 100% with you. I don't think he does. And that's a frustrating thing to Carolina Panthers fans because we saw in the game against Seattle where Bryce Young had to sit with an ankle injury. Andy Dalton had way more of the playbook available. Way more of the playbook available and have more freedom in the offense as the backup quarterback. And we were told before the game, by the way, by Frank Reich, we're going to keep things the same. Andy's going to have about 90% of what we would have with Bryce. I didn't see that. See that at all. Looked very much different. And that is a major concern. It's like, why are you babying this kid? Don't coddle him. Like we talked about Richardson and Stroud a moment ago. They letting those guys open and play.
Yeah.
Do the same for this young guy. He's going to make mistakes. Live with them. This season is all about the growth and development of Bryce Young. If you miss the playoffs, it's going to happen. That's fine. As long as we're seeing growth and development from Bryce Young. But right now, they're not even giving him a chance to grow. They put him in a box. And it's like, all right, do something while you're just stuck in a box. Ain't going to work that way.
And here's something that, some people brought up. They're like, hey, the Falcons and the Saints had different coverages than what the Seahawks had. And so I get that. They had a weakened secondary for the Seahawks. But at the same time, though, you go against the Minnesota Vikings, who coming into that game was number 27 in the NFL in defense. You would think, even in those packages that you knew that were coming, Frank Reich admitted it. You knew that at times they were going to bring 7 or 8, and if you're sending 3 or 4 out, one of those guys has to win something, and you can push it down the field, or just one of those quick hitters that could possibly go for some pretty good yards after the catch. And so it's just one of those things that's kind of interesting. Like, it doesn't feel like the route combinations are good. It doesn't feel like there's enough pre-snap motion. It doesn't feel like there's enough to keep the defense on their heels. We heard the rumors that apparently something about the Panthers checks. They knew the Vikings knew what was coming pre-snap, so they pretty much were ready for it, Luke Kuechly style. So that tells me, and also you didn't call the plays to push it down the field. Even though we were told they checked out of it and they decided to do tunnel screens instead. That tells me that, one, the play calling is not good, that the play design is not good, and probably an antique that should be in your mom's basement or something somewhere, and that Frank Reich needs to hand the sticks over to somebody that maybe trusts Bryce Young. And that person would be Thomas Brown. And once again, I'll bring this up. A 47-yard touchdown pass to DJ Chark against the Seattle Seahawks. That was the idea of Thomas Brown and Parks Frazier. That design was theirs. Busted coverage, yes. But you know what? A good play call can make you bust your coverage.
All right, Chris, let's go ahead and get into Sunday against a Detroit Lions team. It's coming in pretty hot right now. Just got a big win against the Green Bay Packers on the road in Lambeau Field. This Detroit Lions team, in its third year under Dan Campbell, they started off first year under Dan Campbell, if I remember correctly, they didn't win until December. They went like 3-12-1. You actually told me this before we actually started recording. But it's a team that, all right, they knew they were going to take their lumps. They went down to ground zero. We're tearing this thing down. New rookie head coach. We're trading for a veteran quarterback in Jared Goff, who's still really relatively young in his career. But we're going to build this thing up slowly. And then we saw at about the midpoint of last season, things clicked for that franchise, right? Things clicked for that team, clicked for that franchise. And they were in playoff contention after starting 1-6 last year. And now they're rolling hot, and they're probably going to win the NFC North.
Yeah.
They're everything that you want the Carolina Panthers to be.
Absolutely.
They're everything that you want the Carolina Panthers to be, except it feels like the Carolina Panthers decided to, we're going to skip the ground zero part. We're going to still build for the future while also we're going to compete and win right now. It's like, I don't think you could do both.
Yeah. In some ways I understand the idea of that for the Panthers, but I think their approach in 2020 was just all wrong. When you had Matt Rule, the pandemic happened, and you should have literally just been like, we're stripping it down.
Yeah.
Teddy Bridgewater is our guy. For the next 2 years, right? 2020 and 2021, until we find a quarterback.
Yeah.
And they didn't do that. They abandoned the plan early. Now, apparently that was David Tepper's call, so David Tepper can get in on the smoke as well.
Yeah. 100%.
Because whoever it was, whether it's Fitterer, David Tepper, Matt Rule, you abandoned the plan early, and it cost you. And you spent so much time on your quarterbacks, and so many. You spent so many draft picks on quarterbacks that just have not worked out. And now you have a number 1 draft pick. It all just looks like crap right now. So going back to what you're saying with the Lions, it kind of makes me wonder, and the way the Lions look right now, I'm all for giving people a chance. And so Lions did start off 0-8, going to the bye week that year in 2021, come back with a tie against the Steelers, lose the next two, and then finally they get their first win of the season on December 5th against the Minnesota Vikings, which was at home. Now, if the Panthers, it'll be tough if the Panthers get their first win in December. But at the end of that year, you could at least say the Lions got better. And then, of course, you remember last year they started off 1-6. And then had a long run at the end of the year. And really, it was the Carolina Panthers that stopped them on that nice run that they had towards the end of the season, and absolutely kicked their butts with the best offensive output ever. So right now at this point, I'm not on the fire Frank Reich side. I think he needs to give up play calling, but I don't think he needs to be fired. We do need to see improvement, and I think that starts this week. I don't expect them to win, but I would love to see them protect Bryce Young a little bit more. I would love to see them push the ball down the field a little bit more, get a run game going, maybe hit off a few passes for 30, 40 yards. As long as we see that and it's a respectable game, that's just what I want to see. And then let's build on that going forward. But the Lions are a good example as to why you should be patient, and hopefully the Panthers have what's in place for them to be patient as well.
I hope so. And the key word you hit was progress, right? And I think that's the thing that's frustrating right now to a lot of Carolina Panthers fans is the fact that there hasn't been progress. Even from preseason to now, there hasn't been any progress. Gosh, it feels like the team from week one has regressed. And I think it's also because the play calling, like you mentioned, Frank Reich, hasn't changed since that week one game against the Atlanta Falcons. The Falcons game, the second game of the year against the Saints on Monday Night Football, and the fourth game, all three of Bryce Young starts, the play calling was like the exact same. Like nothing changed. It's like, well, no wonder it's predictable. You know? I'm sitting on my couch watching home. You're at Bank of America Stadium this Sunday. I'm like, here's a wide receiver screen.
Same. We were doing it in the press box.
Yeah.
It's going to the right. Oh, no, this one's going to the left.
Yeah.
You saw it coming.
If we can see it, we're not chewing 90 hours of tape every week like these guys are. If we can see it, you think your opponent can't? That's the thing. And like, again, that's the frustrating thing. I think Panthers fans this whole season wanted to see the trajectory, right, of the Panthers in terms of building, growing. Yeah, you're going to take lumps, you're going to take losses, but you want to see growth. You want to see improvement. That's the thing that this whole season, in my opinion, really hinged on, was just growth and development. If you take losses, fine, but you want to be like what the Detroit Lions are right now. Year 3, they are freaking cooking.
It's funny. I had a conversation with Luis Fernandez here at WRL on Monday, and he said that something that was funny to me. He was just like, man, the Panthers offense is so stagnant and just old looking. It's just, he was like, in the NFL, you would want to have your offense either mirror a Shanahan offense, Andy Reid offense, or Sean McVay offense. And I was like, guess what, Lewis? They have somebody from Sean McVay's system as their offensive coordinator, and they're not using it.
Imagine that.
They're not even using it. So, and also, remember this, Austin Corbett from the Rams, hopefully he should be coming back. We got that good news that he's going to be elevated from the PUP list, so now he has 21 days to be added to the roster. But you have even a guy who understands the blocking scheme from the Rams on your roster that you paid money to. And hopefully when he comes back, he helps elevate the team. But you have the pieces that are there. It's just up to the Carolina Panthers to use it. It's just it's like getting all these toys at Christmas, but you decided to not play with them. You decided to play with the toys that you're used to, the 2 or 3 toys that you're used to, and not using all the other ones. Frank Reich, use your toys.
You decided to play with the box the toy came in. That's it. You decided to play with the box
That's even better.
The toy came in.
Yeah.
Yeah. And my last thing about the comparison right now between Detroit and Carolina. Final thing on this. They stripped everything down, right? They got rid of their franchise quarterback. They got picks, but they did get a quarterback in return who, as you mentioned, played in a Super Bowl. Came from McVay's offense. Go figure. But they built up their draft capital. This is what the Carolina Panthers have used right now to get Bryce Young. or to find a quarterback, right? To find a franchise quarterback. They settled on Bryce Young. Because remember, they traded for Sam Darnold.
Yep.
They traded for Baker Mayfield. They traded up to draft Matt Corral, and they traded up again to take Bryce Young. They've used a 2021 6th-round pick, a 22 second, a 22 fourth, a 24 fifth, a 22 fourth, a 23 third, a 23 first, a 24th first, a 25th second, DJ Moore.
This is making me mad.
Like, this is what they traded away.
This is making me mad.
This is what they traded away for one position. One position. I may have miscounted on some of it. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 picks and a player. 9 picks and a player. Like, that's your
boy.
That literally 9 picks plus 1 player. That's 10 guys. That's your starting quarterback. That's the other 10 guys around the starting quarterback.
I was going to say, that sounds like a good running back. Sounds like a good tight end, a good wide receiver. That sounds like another good linebacker. That sounds like another good defensive tackle, another edge rusher, another cornerback. Like, oh my God. It's just, and then also with the picks, and this is off topic, but with the picks that they had already, like, I love J.C. Horn, but you could have had Michael Parsons.
Yeah. Yep. And here's the thing. I didn't even take into consideration who was even drafted when they traded was a 3rd-round pick for C.J. Henderson. You know, like, not even factoring in that kind of stuff either. Like, I got to go back and look and see who that was here in a sec. But this brings up our.
They traded and also traded Dan Arnold in there, so they could have already had their tight end, but they didn't even let that like play out to where they could have a tight end. That.
And they still don't have a tight end. Go figure. Now this brings up to the final thing. We're seeing what looks like a disgruntled Brian Burns right now. A very disgruntled Brian Burns. I don't know if he deleted the like or unliked something, but there was a social media post on Instagram talking about being a Carolina Panthers fan, how hard it is right now. And also says in there that Frank Reich sucks, paraphrasing here. But he allegedly liked it. And here's the thing. If I'm Brian Burns, as Chris is showing us right here, for those who are actually watching here on YouTube, Brian Burns liking this Instagram post. Anyway, creating ways to lose is what the headline says. But Brian Burns, he sees everything that I just mentioned about all these trades just to get a quarterback. When Brian Burns was drafted, Ron Rivera was the head coach. Marnie Herney was the GM. Since then, Herney no longer there. Fitterer comes in. Rivera no longer there. In comes Matt Rule, no longer there. Steve Wilkes takes over as the interim head coach. Now there's Frank Reich. And there's also been Cam Newton starting quarterback, Teddy Bridgewater, Kyle Allen,
Sam Darnold, Baker Mayfield, PJ
Walker, Bryce Young, Andy Dalton. Now I'm probably missing another starting quarterback in there too. Like 8, 9 starting quarterbacks.
I mean, Will Greer.
Will Greer
had a game.
Will Greer. That's right. I forgot about.
Did Heineke have a game?
I'm pretty sure he did. So nonetheless, like, you look at the number of starting quarterbacks, the number of different head coaches that he's experienced in just his 5th season with this team. Why would he actually want to re-sign here? Like, why would he actually want to re-sign with the Carolina Panthers? Give me one good reason why he would want to stay here. Why would Jeremy Chin, who's about to be a free agent, why would he want to stay? Why would Derek Brown want to stay? Like, what about this franchise right now shows any sort of stability? Again, I'm going to compare it to the team that the Carolina Panthers are playing this Sunday, the Detroit Lions. Whoever would have thought you would hear the word stability and Detroit Lions together? Because right now, it's 100% stability. Stability with coaching, front office. They're making all the right moves, and they're drafting really well. It's like, wait a second. They actually have stability and their success.
The Lions got Alex. The Lions got Alex Anzalone looking like a great great linebacker right now. Like, it's crazy. Like, just imagine what another franchise with another good defensive coordinator, which I'm not saying it ever was not, but there's something about Jeremy Chin that just doesn't vibe with him. Imagine what somebody else would do with Jeremy Chin.
God,
you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Like, and people will be calling this steal, and that's the part that I'm afraid of. Is like, you got Sam Darnold that goes to the 49ers. And the 49ers are very much so comfortable. I mean, the 49ers traded away their first-round pick and Trey Lance because Sam Darnold was that good. And Sam Darnold almost became the starter if Brock Purdy wasn't going to be ready. Yep. Think about that. Also, people are talking about Christian McCaffrey potentially as an MVP candidate. All of these former Carolina Panthers looking good on other people's squads. It's annoying to see.
Yeah. That's what we're dealing with right now. We're dealing with that right now. Better start seeing some things turn around real fast before you know it. You really are going to lose your fan base because right now they're reaching a boiling point.
What if, and this is off topic, what if our starting cornerbacks were Stephon Gilmore and Rasul Douglas? Because it could have happened. We made choices for it to not happen.
Yeah.
That could have happened. But we made certain choices. Those guys looking great where they're at right now too. Oh my God, those guys are playing amazing right now.
Boy, you know what? You listening and watching this, make that choice. Smash that subscribe button. Make sure you follow us wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, you name it. We are there. But again, let us know in the comment section your thoughts on the Panthers right now and everything they're dealing with. And we will have another episode for you Sunday, right after the Detroit Lions and Carolina Panthers square off up in Detroit. Chris and I'll be back with you for another episode. Until then, enjoy this beautiful fall weather. We'll see you on Sunday.